Let's talk about something most men ignore until it completely ruins them. Manipulation. Now, you might not think it's happening to you. She's sweet. She's kind. You love her. But that's exactly how it starts. You slowly give up your space, your peace of mind, even your opinions, because you think love means making her happy, no matter the cost. But what if I told you? Some women have mastered the art of control so well, they don't need to raise their voice or start a fight. They just know how to get their way, every single time. And before you even realize what's going on, you're the one saying sorry, compromising again, chasing after something that feels like love, but comes with rules, conditions, and emotional traps. Now let me be clear, this isn't about bashing women. In fact, if you're a woman watching this, you might recognize some of these patterns in yourself or in your partner. But if you're a man, and you're starting to feel like you're constantly giving in, constantly second-guessing yourself, constantly walking on eggshells, then pay attention. Because today we're going to break down 7 tactics women use, sometimes without even realizing, to manipulate and control men. Number 1. Emotional blackmail. This one is hard to see because it doesn't start with shouting, threats, or anger. It starts with silence, guilt, and that sinking feeling in your stomach. You tell her something honest, maybe a boundary you need to set, or something that's been bothering you. And instead of talking it through like an adult, she shuts down, withdraws, looks hurt, maybe even cries. Suddenly, you're not thinking about your point anymore. You're thinking about how to make her feel better. You're apologizing for telling the truth. That's emotional blackmail. And it works because you're a decent man, because you don't want to hurt her. But here's the twist, she knows that. And if she's doing this often, she's counting on it. In more extreme cases, it gets darker. She might bring up things you told her in confidence, your past mistakes, your vulnerabilities, and use them against you. She might say things like, "If you leave me, I'll tell everyone," or "I can't live without you," or "You're the only one who understands me." It doesn't sound like blackmail, but it feels like a trap, and that's exactly what it is. When love becomes a tool to make you feel guilty, fearful, or obligated, it's not love anymore. It's manipulation dressed as affection, and the longer you stay in it, the more you lose sight of who you really are. Number 2. Sex as a weapon. At first, it feels like she's just upset, distant, maybe she needs space. But then you start to notice a pattern. Every time you disagree, every time you assert yourself, she pulls away, physically. No more affection, no intimacy, not even a simple touch. And it doesn't happen because she's genuinely hurt. It happens because she wants to control the situation. And you. See, for some women, sex becomes a currency, a way to reward you when you behave, and punish you when you don't. It's no longer about connection. It's a quiet transaction where the price is your obedience. She may not say it outright, but the message is clear. Do things my way or sleep alone. And the worst part, most men don't realize it's happening until they start changing who they are just to avoid being rejected again. They walk on eggshells, apologize first, give in, not because they believe they're wrong, but because they miss her warmth. They crave the closeness, and she knows it. But here's what you need to remember. When intimacy is used as leverage, it stops being love. It becomes a weapon, a silent, seductive form of control. And if you give in to that kind of dynamic, you're no longer her man. You're her puppet. Number 3. Excessive compliments. This one catches you off guard, because who doesn't like being complimented? One day, she looks at you and says you're the most handsome man she's ever seen. She praises the way you speak, the way you dress, the way you breathe. It feels good, maybe even too good. Because here's the thing, if she's not the type to shower you with praise regularly, and suddenly she's laying it on thick, you need to ask yourself, why now? Flattery can be genuine, but when it shows up right before she asks for something, like a favor, a purchase, or even your silence, that's not flattery anymore. That's strategy. It's no different than a salesperson smiling before closing the deal. Except this time, the deal is your attention, your energy, your resources. And if you call it out, she might laugh, act innocent, or say, "Can't I just appreciate my man?" Of course she can. But when the compliments are excessive, misaligned, and always followed by a request, it's not appreciation. It's conditioning. You begin associating her praise with saying yes. And over time, you stop questioning her motives. That's how it works. Not through force, but through subtle programming. So remember this, a real compliment lifts you up because it's true. A manipulative one lifts you up just enough to to push you in the direction she wants. Number 4. Prove your love tricks. It always starts with a simple phrase. If you really love me, sounds innocent, right? But those 5 words are the opening move in a psychological chess game. If you love me, you'll cancel that trip with your friends. If you love me, you'll help me pay for this. If you love me, you'll do this one little thing, just this once. And you do it because you care. Because you don't want her to feel unloved. Because you've been conditioned to prove it, over and over again. But here's what most men miss. Love isn't something you perform on demand. It's not a test you keep retaking until she's satisfied. And it sure as hell isn't something you buy, trade, or beg to validate. When she constantly asks you to prove your love through sacrifice, gifts, or submission, she's not measuring your love. She's measuring your willingness to bend. And with every yes you give, she learns that if you love me, works. So she keeps using it. What begins as a sweet request becomes a pattern. A routine where your worth is tied to how much you can give up. Until one day, you're the guy who sold his peace, his purpose, and maybe even his future, just to be enough in her eyes. But here's the truth. Real love doesn't demand proof. It recognizes presence. Number 5. Over-the-top drama and gaslighting. You're having a normal conversation. Maybe you voice a concern. Maybe you set a boundary. And suddenly, boom, she flips it. She says, "I can't believe you of all people would say that." Or, "Wow, after everything I've done for you." Suddenly, you're the bad guy. You're selfish, cold, uncaring. At least, that's what she wants you to think. What just happened isn't just drama. It's manipulation through distortion. She takes something small, your words, your actions, and turns it into a personal attack. Then she throws it back at you, wrapped in emotional chaos, so you start doubting your own intentions. This is gaslighting in disguise, and it's incredibly effective, because the more you doubt yourself, the more power she gains. You'll find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, explaining things you never meant, trying to fix problems that weren't even yours to begin with. And it works because you're not just fighting her words, you're fighting her emotions, her tears, her outrage. But here's the truth. A woman who truly respects you doesn't weaponize her feelings to win an argument. She doesn't twist your reality just to stay in control. So the next time you feel like you're losing your grip on the truth, step back, watch her pattern, and remember this: love isn't supposed to make you feel insane. Number 6. Just joking excuse. It always sounds harmless at first. She makes a comment that cuts deep about your appearance, your ambition, your past. You pause. You feel it sting. And before you can even respond, she laughs and says, "Oh my God, relax. I was just joking." But here's the catch. She wasn't. That joke was a message, a test, sometimes even an attack, just hidden behind a smile. And when you react, she flips it on you. You're too sensitive. You can't take a joke? Now, you're not only hurt, you're embarrassed for feeling hurt. This is emotional manipulation at its most subtle. Because what she really said, that was the truth. What followed, the laughter, the sarcasm, the brush off, was just the cover. It's a tactic used to express resentment, judgment, or dominance, without ever taking responsibility for it. You can't call her out because she was joking. You can't defend yourself because now you look like the one making it serious. And the more you let it slide, the more it becomes her weapon of choice. Remember this: a loving partner doesn't humiliate you, then hide behind humor. There's a difference between playful teasing and calculated digs. So the next time a joke feels like a wound, don't laugh with her just to keep the peace. You deserve a relationship where your feelings are safe, not dismissed. Number 7. Weaponized tears. You're in the middle of a serious conversation. You finally find the courage to speak your truth. Maybe you're setting a boundary. Maybe you're calling something out that's been bothering you for weeks. And then, she starts to cry. Suddenly, everything shifts. Now you're the one feeling guilty. You lower your voice. You backtrack. You apologize, even when you've done nothing wrong. This is the power of weaponized tears. See, most men aren't prepared for this. We're taught to protect, to be gentle, to comfort a woman when she cries. And manipulators know that. So some women, consciously or not, use tears as a shield. Not because they're truly hurt, but because it works. It short-circuits your logic. It makes you feel like the villain. And it lets her avoid accountability without ever saying a word. Now let's be clear. Not all crying is manipulation. Some tears are real. Some come from pain, from fear, from vulnerability. But when crying becomes her default reaction, every time you bring up something uncomfortable, when it happens the moment she starts losing control, you're not seeing pain, you're seeing performance. And your job isn't to be heartless, it's to be clear. Because a high-value man doesn't let emotions, his or hers, dictate truth. He sees through the fog, and when needed, he stands his ground with compassion, not confusion. By now, you've probably realized something. Manipulation doesn't always look like domination. It doesn't always scream, threaten, or demand. Sometimes, it whispers through praise. It hides behind affection. It waits in silence. And it cries at just the right moment. But no matter how gentle it seems, it's still control. If any of these 7 tactics felt familiar to you, if you've been guilt, gaslit, seduced into compliance, or shamed into silence, it's time to step back and reclaim your perspective. So what do you do now? First, pause and think. Never react emotionally to emotional manipulation. Create space between stimulus and response. That's where your clarity lives. That's where your power begins. Second, learn to say no. A woman who respects you won't fall apart just because you set a boundary. Saying no doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. And it forces both of you to rise above the games. Third, walk away when you must. Not with anger, not with drama, but with the quiet strength of a man who knows his worth. Because love should never feel like pressure, like sacrifice without return, like guilt disguised as care. A manipulative woman doesn't want to understand you. She wants to manage you. And if you're not careful, you'll end up giving everything away while thinking you're building a relationship. But a high-value man sees through the illusion. He knows that real love is not about control. It's about connection, respect, and mutual growth. So choose wisely, because not every woman who wants you deserves you.